Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rabbi Reacts as we continue to explore the topic of free will and continue to dissect the great free will debate on BigThink. We've looked at thinkers like Daniel Dennett and Steven Pinker, Michio Kaku, and today we get to look at Michael Gazzaniga. At least I hope that is the correct way to pronounce his name. Before we go into this video and ask ourselves where in the mind, brain, social interaction does free will actually lie, before we do that, please could you please could you subscribe, and please could you click on the notifications click so that you get notified every time we make these videos. I love the interactions, we're all loving the comments and so on. A lot of you direct messaging me as well. If you leave them on public comment, then that also adds because it means others can count comments as well. In the meantime, whilst I'm getting a lot of different recommendations about other videos to make, I want to have a look at one more great thinker who has contributed to the great free will debate on BigThink, and that is, as I said, I hope I pronounced him correctly, Michael Gazzaniga, and we will be looking at his argument about free will.
The essential part of free will that people want to hold on to is the sense that therefore makes you responsible for your actions. So it's the idea of personal responsibility. And I think that's very important, and I don't think that all this mechanistic work on the brain in any way threatens that.
Now that's very fascinating and alludes to something I've also been saying along the way, which is mechanistic work on the brain alone is not a contradiction to free will. Now I want to sort of now listen together to what he actually then says, and we'll see if we can break it apart and see how the two could potentially work together.
The rules that we work out living together. So the metaphor I like to use is cars and traffic. We can study cars and all their physical relationships and know exactly how they work. It in no way prepares us to understand traffic when they all get together and start interacting. That's another level of organization and description of these elements interacting. So the same as with brains, that we can understand brains to the nth degree, and that's fine, and that's what we're doing. But it's not going to in any way interfere with the fact that taking responsibility in a social network is done at that level. So the way I sum it up is that, brains are automatic, but people are free.
Okay, so he's said a few interesting things here. One is he's compared it to cars and traffic. Cars are like the mechanism of the brain, the neurons firing, with the brain. This part of the brain controls the motion of this hand, right? Quite active at the moment in mine, right? This part controls the motion of this hand. This part controls the mouth, the voice box, all these various things. This part controls emotion. This part controls this, and this. That doesn't tell you working out this part of the car does this part of the car does this part of the car does this, and this, and knowing about that in every car on the road will not tell you how traffic is going to work, and that suddenly everyone's going to stop at a traffic light, or they're going to become aggressive around this roundabout or not, or this lot of traffic will end up pushing this out. In a similar way, he wants to say knowing all the input, outputs, and micro processes in the brain, and even constructed bits of where things happen in brains, doesn't by itself tell you how human social behavior will work, and he wants to then locate free will out in the social behavior. Now, one point I think is really important, whether it's the way these videos are cut, or whether it's some of these experts in particular areas, sometimes their arguments don't quite add up, because that didn't explain where free will came. But I'm commenting on it because I wanted to comment on different arguments in the great free will debate. But let me give you a slightly different model, and there's a great video online of Max Tegmark, another brilliant physicist who also gets into the free will debate, and he makes the following observation. He says that the best understanding we actually seem to have now of how brains and minds and consciousness all work together is not that consciousness and brains are different things. Another philosopher says something very similar. Also, you can find his TED talk on it is John Searle. They're not different things, but they're different properties of the same thing, in the same way as cells are made up of molecules. Right? But when you get a cell made up of molecules, if you would study the behavior of molecules, it will not tell you the information of the behavior of the cell. That you need a whole different discipline called biology. A whole different bunch of properties come up that together, coordinated in a particular way, can do all sorts of processes. And as much as the molecules influence the behavior of the cell then influences the behavior of the molecules. So the point is that just because you've got lots of little neurons flying around and doing things, right, and they together may help build this thing called consciousness and self-awareness and mind and all the patterns, doesn't mean that you can exhaust or even be able to study the way mind works just by studying the neurons. And doesn't mean the causal works one way, the causation works one way. Just like the cell has at least as much influence on the molecules as the molecules does on the cell, so too, the mind has at least as much influence on the brain as the brain has on the mind. Or let's use a social model. Suppose an alien comes down from Earth and hears about this thing called laws. What are these laws? All I see are people made of chemicals and molecules and atoms and so on. And then the alien goes around and that's all there is to it. And somebody explains to them, no, you're missing the point over here, right? It is true these little micro interactions in humans collectively sort of produce laws. It's not quite how it works. So there's a big, together they produce this society, and society has an impact on individuals, and they're produced government. Now, what is government? Not a wispy extra thing that has to land into humans to create order. No, the humans themselves have created something that is greater than all of them, that actually controls them and moves around. They may create a ruler, a dictator, a king or queen, or a president or a prime minister, who may have more rule or less rule, but maybe the nexus point of power. No new power sources landed on them. There's no wispy magical things, but there really, really, really is such a thing called law. And there really, really, really is such a thing called society and social pressure and social conformity and law and behavioral control and all this kind of stuff. And it controls the people. Society controls individuals as much as individuals control society. As much as individuals cause society, society causes individual behavior in ways that we don't even notice. The language we speak, we didn't create it, right? The clothing we wear. We might go into a shop and think, I've got loads of choice between A and B and C and D. All the style of clothing we choose is dictated by society, and the symbols of what each one is dictated by society. Even what music we like, the way we think, our attitudes on social things, moral things, political things, are pretty much as much shaped by society as we shape society. Society shapes us. Laws shape us, shape our behavior. In a very analogous way, the brain at a certain point can have created a bit of awareness and a mind and a consciousness. And then it doubled down and made more and more and more of it. And this gains control over the brain itself. It actually dictates the way the brain cells then behave. So if you're only studying the brain cells, you can fully account for everything just by the brain cell maneuvers. But you can completely miss the causation as deeply as you can by just studying a cell, ignoring the cell and studying just what are the interactions between all its molecules. There is no such thing as a cell. There is no such thing as society. There is no such thing as consciousness. There is no such thing as free will. There is no such thing as all this stuff. That's the most likely place that it is located. In other words, is the deepest phenomenon of the beautiful oneness and integration that produces that portal we discussed in an earlier video of call it godliness, call it a soul, call it a mind, call it whatever you want to. And that's really the location of where free will might actually most be and most manifest. Now, I've been in the last few videos, a whole series on free will, and the last 3 in particular on the great free will debate. And the next video, I'd actually like to make one sort of summing up video of what I believe the Jewish perspective is on all of this. I've given certain indications along the way, or let's at least say my perspective as a thinking Jew and a philosophically thinking person as well. At least give something kind of up all these different pieces. I'm loving this topic and loving the comments and debate that's coming from it, and the critiques and the positive feedback and all this kind of stuff. Hope these are stimulating. Hope you're really enjoying them, and whether you're feeling provoked by them, evoked by them, excited by them, frustrated by them, hopefully it's part of the great conversation of thinking more deeply about all of these topics. Hope to see you on the next video. Hi everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please click on the like and subscribe and hit the notification button below. Thanks so much.